Historians mention three great commanders in the past of humanity.
One of them is praised by Genghis Khan. It is the legendary name that Fatih Sultan Mehmet commemorates his name.
He is Alexander the Great. Now we are starting a unique journey into the past together. Lean back and get ready for the adventure. The date is 356 BC, the place is Macedonia. King movie, tough, contrary, alcoholic. But he is a successful commander. He managed to gather all the Greek city-states under one roof except Sparta.
And today he had a son, Alexander, whose name will never be forgotten.
In those years, children in Greece were starting to receive very harsh education when they were younger.
Starvation, beatings. Only some of them. Philippe wanted his son Alexander to grow up like an iron helmet, but Alexander was both physically weak and emotionally sensitive as a mother's lamb.
In any case, the only woman who would shape his life would be his mother. It is believed among the Greeks that his mother was a descendant of Achilles. Therefore, he was also a childhood hero for Alexander. In historical records, it is told that almost no night of his life did he go to sleep without reading the epics of Achilles. His teacher and the person who gave him his worldview is the famous philosopher Aristotle. Alexander's first great victory was neither against giant armies nor against his opponents on the wrestling field.
It was Cephalos who scored his first victory. This is a line of Cephalos, black, big and impregnable.
For this reason, although it was nice, no one wanted to buy it, but Alexander understood the problem of the horse. This Cephalos was afraid of his own shadow. Iskender made this Cephalos overcome this fear by turning his face to the sun. This event made even his father Philippi proud otherwise, and Alexander gained the greatest friend in his life. They would walk half the known world together. In the year 336 BC, a strange thing happened. King Philip of Macedonia was assassinated and died in front of his son at an invitation. Whoever carried out this assassination would never be found.
According to some, the Persian Emperor Darius; according to others, his wife Olympia, who was angry that he had taken a new wife, could never be answered.
Alexander, who was 20 years old that day, became the king of Macedonia at an unexpected moment. The first thing he did was to eliminate his half-brother, who, according to the traditions of the period, was still in the cradle, and anyone who could be considered the heir to the throne.
Now he was a complete king, but a king who wanted to go into the unknown, to the end of the world, made his first military operations to the rebellious Greek city-states.
And after restoring unity, he crossed the Dardanelles Strait with his army of 45,000 men and entered the Persian territory. Now the adventure had begun, and he was also aware that there would be no return for what he had done, when Alexander, who visited the ruins of the city of Troy in Dardanelles and the tomb of Achilles, which was also located here, heard that the governor of the Persian region was coming soon with an army of 40,000 men. He immediately took action and officially swept the Persian army. This was undoubtedly an event that surprised the Persians, the greatest power of the ancient world. How did a 20-year-old boy dare to do this? and even then the Persian Emperor Darius wrote a letter to Alexander, saying that he was a child, and sent toys made of gold. But Darius still couldn't figure out who the person he was underestimating was. Many of the generals on this adventurous trip were friends he had grown up with.
Well-trained soldiers from Macedonia and Greece. Iskender advances by winning victories one by one and incorporated cities such as Ephesus, Miletus, Halicarnassus, side one by one into its territory.
By drawing zigzags, he came to the city of Gordion, known today as Ankara, in the center of Anatolia. A legend is told here. According to legend, there is a wedding in the city of Gordion, and only the person who will rule the world can solve it. They bring it in front of Alexander. Alexander first examines it, and then pulls out his sword and cuts this knot. While advancing by capturing the Anatolian cities, news came that a huge Persian army was approaching near Antioch. Emperor Darius took his family with him to show his victory. There are only 45,000 Greek soldiers compared to the Persian army of about 120,000 people. The most important troops in the Greek army were light infantry called phalanx and carrying 6-meter spears. The two armies come face to face, and again, thanks to Alexander's successful tactics, the Persian army is destroyed. Emperor Darius flees the battlefield. Alexander will be very angry at this situation, because according to him, no matter what happens, a king should never be a coward and run away from the battlefield, leaving his family behind. This is one of the characteristics of Alexander the Great. Instead of managing wars from behind the front lines, he has always fought at the front. Despite being injured many times, and even having his helmet smashed with an axe once, Darius' mother and wife are now in Alexander's hands, and he orders them to be treated as before. In fact, Darius's mother loves Alexander so much that after a while she will be responsible for Alexander's meals. After this victory, Alexander continues to advance through the coastal cities of the Middle East and many along this line, and he will engage in many more major wars along this line. He comes out of all of them undefeated. His soldiers from the spacious climate of Greece cross the desert heat after him. They even enter the ancient city of Petra. There is still a statue of Alexander here today, and Iskender came to Egypt and easily took over this place and was greeted with great love by the people. At that time, the Egyptian and Greek cultures were very close cultures to each other. And because the Egyptians looked at the Persians as invaders, they welcomed Alexander as their savior, and even declared him the Egyptian pharaoh here. You can see that he is depicted in hieroglyphs with a pharaoh's outfit and beard. Alexander, who founded the city of Alexandria, which will be named after one of the most beautiful places in Egypt, built a giant library here and the Alexandria Lighthouse, which is considered one of the 7 wonders of the world. However, something strange happens again at that time. It is explained that he is on a spiritual quest. According to the inscriptions, Alexander goes on a personal journey and hits himself in the desert. Devastated by heat and thirst, he reaches the city of Shiva near Libya, where there is a temple of Ammon. And he goes in and prays to Ammon. No one knows what happened there. Only according to the stories, Alexander received a divine message from Ammon. When he came out of the temple, he was declared a demigod by the priests as the son of Zeus.
Unfortunately, there is not much information about what he lived here, and the records about his meetings in the temple are few. But after his death, Alexander, who spent a short time in Egypt to be accepted as a god for the Egyptian pagans for centuries, crosses the deserts again with his army and goes after Darius.
Darius has built a huge army from his entire empire, and this time he has no intention of leaving his job to chance. According to the records of the Persians and Greeks, this army consisted of 200 to 300,000 soldiers. Alexander, on the other hand, had about 50,000 men. When the two armies faced each other, the Persians had both the advantage of numbers and terrain. But Alexander did something interesting. He used an unusual tactic by lining up his army in the form of levitation, and in a short time the giant Persian army was plundered. When Darius is about to run away, Alexander throws his spears. But he can't hit it. He can't catch up even if he goes after it. And the Persian king walks away from the battlefield again. This is a definite domination, and the Greeks enter Babylon, the capital of the Persians. When they entered the city, they were so surprised by what they saw that even the Greek generals were afraid that such wealth and splendor would make them comfortable. It is known that the gold that came after this victory was equivalent to $60 billion today, and a very large part of the money was distributed to Alexander's soldiers. In a short time, it moved eastward again. He has crossed the icy and steep Turkey Bird Mountains, one of the highest and most difficult mountains in the world, twice, while news comes that Darius, who was on the run, was killed by his own close people. Men who are waiting to be rewarded are executed, and Alexander does not hold back from showing his respect to Darius by having him buried in the Valley of the Kings according to Persian traditions. At this time, while the army was advancing in the mountains, Iskender was so upset that Alexander's beloved horse Bucephalos was stolen by gangs that he immediately sent news to the highlanders. The message was short and to the point. "If you don't bring it, I'll burn down all the settlements here." The frightened thieves bring the horse back, and Alexander cannot hold back tears of joy, even drowning them in gold while the thieves are waiting to be punished. Also at this time, he marries Princess Roxana, the daughter of the chief of a mountain tribe. Although sources say that her friends criticized the marriage a lot and even caused quarrels, it is known that the couple loved each other over time. Next up is Central Asia. The Turkish steppes are so cold that even the ice gets cold. The Central Asian expeditions are mentioned in the records as one of the most difficult expeditions of Alexander. The nomadic peoples in Asia showed fierce resistance. They have even achieved success in many places, but Alexander had the ability to adapt his army well to different environments.
And he understood that the most important advantage of Central Asian warriors was that they were mounted archers who could shoot long distances.
Alexander, who won victories in Central Asia by applying similar tactics, will conquer many major cities, including Samarkand, and will establish 10 cities of Alexandria in this geography and its surroundings. The army of the Iskandera was not an army consisting only of soldiers intended to destroy. There were engineers, artists, actors, thinkers, architects, slaves, and thousands of artisans in it.
He took his own culture and philosophy wherever he entered. And instead of changing the leader of the cities of the countries he conquered, he wisely made those people the rulers of their territory as governors. He had never interfered with their way of governing, their religion, their culture. India is a big country where there were various kingdoms in those years, and the most powerful of these kings is the rival of Alexander. Even if Alexander won the war in a short time, his horse was this Cephalos during the war.
He's worn it out a lot. He even founded a city called this Mullet on the place where he buried his horse. But they didn't stop. They moved forward. They advanced into the interior of India. They encountered people who performed rituals like they had never seen before. Sorcerers, strangely dressed tribal chiefs, many new animals that they called monsters. They advanced by overcoming deserts, forests, mountains, icy plains, hunger and thirst, death and pain. Iskandar considered the Indian tribes, Persian soldiers and Greeks equal and granted them the same rights.
In fact, he was not afraid to let them greet him according to their culture and dress decently decked out among them, which also broke his relationship with his friends many times.
Realizing that the soldiers did not want to go any further due to both the fights experienced from similar situations and the monsoon rains that had not stopped for months, Alexander returned to Babylon in order to plan the conquest of Africa. He had not acted at the request of anyone except his soldiers until now. And what happened in a short time? This is a great leader.
This man, who was going to change the world forever, died at the age of 33 by contracting his disease. He was not a hero in appearance, nor was his death a death worthy of heroes. He didn't have cool last words. He did not die by a sword blow, yes. His death was not heroic, but who was able to achieve what he was able to do. It is rumored that in a short period of 13 years, he had marched 33,000 kilometers with his soldiers, won countless wars and became the first great conqueror of history. When he died, he called his friends the strongest of you, who asked who do you leave the empire to, and breathed his last without completing his promise. Alexander the Great not only conquered the land, he changed the cultural future of humanity forever, established the Hellenistic understanding, laid the foundation of the Roman Empire and the future Europe and even the world. You can understand this better if you read many articles and books written on the world after Alexander. It is even known that among some peoples, where he was depicted deconstructed with an ox with horns on some coins minted later on behalf of Alexander, he was called Double Horn. He became a mythological hero for the Indians. For the Central Asians, he was an exemplary leader whose name even Genghis Khan would remember. For the Egyptians he was worshipped for centuries as a pagan god. In the history of his life, there was no one who had not heard of him from the southernmost part of Africa to the northernmost part of Asia. He has appeared in the mythologies of almost all societies in some way as the hero who achieved the impossible. The mother of the Persian Emperor Darius, whom he defeated, died of illness due to her sadness at the death of Alexander. We know that when Alexander died in Babylon, because he was also the Egyptian pharaoh, his body was embalmed and brought to the city of Alexandria in Egypt, where it was placed in a private sarcophagus for him. For centuries, kings have come to visit him, and even when the great Roman Emperor Augustus came to Egypt and wanted to see Alexander's body, he was told that he could see the body of other kings as well. While he left a philosophy of Iskender, who said that I came to see the king, not a handful of dead. The philosophy of wanting the greatest. He had a dream. The dream of a world united under one roof. This is a dream that may never come true. But this dream was remembered with him, and this will always come to mind when it is said that Alexander the Great will be remembered. You can subscribe to my channel to get more information, and you can follow me on my Instagram account to earn various big gifts. Have a nice trip.